Hi guys, welcome to Robin Hood Diaries. It's me again. Welcome this evening. It is this evening for me, as I'm always saying. Afternoon, day, middle of the night, whatever. I'm glad you could join me. As previewed, tonight's going to be about my membership with the Actors Studio back in the early to mid 70s. This is when it was located on Hollywood Boulevard, second story, sort of above the Hollywood Wax Museum. I don't even know if that's still there, but it was. And then in later years, it became the Stella Adler Theater, which is not the Actors Studio. I can talk about Stella and I can talk about Kim Stanley in an upcoming episode, actually. But it's not the Stella Adler Theater. It was the Actors Studio. It was a very steep staircase up to the second story. It had a huge portrait of Marilyn Monroe from bus stop over the reception. It was kind of grungy, kind of musty, and that looking up, and then everything was to your left. So my mom knew people, and in the weirdest kind of way. I mean, my dad knew people. Someday I'll tell you how we met Dennis and all kinds of things that nobody knows about my dad but me. Um, so my mom knew people in the weirdest of ways. Like my mom would play golf with Bob Hope and his wife. So it was like a different strata of social something or other. It wasn't Hollywood, but it was Beverly Hills, but it was old money, whatever. It afforded me social opportunities, of course, and it afforded me opportunities I wouldn't otherwise have, like studying with Lee Strasberg directly, like joining La Mama, like having the best teachers always, um, which is not always a good thing. uh, so, this brings us to the Actors Studio. Second story, Hollywood Boulevard, full straight across studio overlooking the boulevard right over the Hollywood Wax Museum. I joined the Actors Studio in January of 1974. I entered into the program with two other youths. One, I want to say, was Penelope Sudrow, the actress. I actually sent her an email today to confirm that that was her, as me, her, and one other child. But I can't forget, it may have been some work I did at the Coronet Theater with her. Anyway, I believe it was her, myself, and one other child that were in this sort of impromptu youth program that included alternating adults. Okay, so I'm brought into the Actors Studio, and I am thrown into the lion's cage. The whole second story of the studio, Lee would work with myself, the two other youths, and alternate 1 to 2 adults in this program. So Lee would have us work the three children with alternating 1 to 2 adults or no adults. Would have us work on abstract, it was all exclusively improvisational work. He would have us work on abstract scenarios whereby there was no furniture, there was no props, there was no benches. You were really in a space, and that was sort of like what he called the blank space work, whatever. And then there was the more structured improvisational scenarios that were in regular environments. You would have chairs like you were in a classroom. You would have, turned over chairs like you were sitting on by the rocks, whatever. And he would do these with myself and the two other kids. And then, like I said, he would fold in. There were two other actors in the improv program that I knew of that were there. I would go like maybe 3 times a week. And like I said, he would work with the three of us, and then he would alternate 2 adults in, 1 adult in, or no adults in, never them together. Because the focus was on us, I guess. Well, I guess it was on all of us. So in doing this work in the second story in this huge studio that was the Actors Studio, he would have the children, us three kids at the end of the studio with either props or no props, depending on whether it was a blank space environment or a working environment. And so he would traverse the length of this long studio to where we were clustered with either props or no props. And he would hunker down with us and he would quietly, um, like, explain the improvisational scenario. And then he would get up and then he would traverse all the way the length of the studio back to where he was at. And then we would start. And never an interruption. I don't know what other people's experiences of him were, but he would give the directives and not interrupt. And then in between or after, he would make adjustments. And again, he would traverse the length of the studio from where he was down there with Frank and Jeannie Robbins, his proteges, with whom I also studied, back over to where we were, hunker down again, make his adjustments or switch the scenario or whatever, and then rinse and repeat and go back to the end of the studio and watch again and not interrupt. And this man was not cuddly. He was serious and he was not lenient. I'm not saying he was strict, but you were expected to listen. And he would just do this sort of alternating improvisational scenarios with myself, the two other kids, and those rotating adults. Wow. 3-1. That's what I said. 3-1, unless you count the adults. 3-1 with Lee. So he also had two proteges. They were a married couple, and they were called Frank and Jeannie Robbins, Geannie, Robbins with two B's. I guess you can Google them. And they were his proteges as teachers. And they were there at the other end of the room with him when we were working all together. And then what happened was I was sort of transitioned into an impromptu sort of musical theater program that Frank and Jeannie were working on to showcase, to do more showcasey things, not so much scene work, but like to actually, do a scene from something. But musical theater for some reason, I don't know. Maybe that's what he saw in the stars for me, musical theater. Not quite. When we transitioned into this musical theater program, it was then the focus was with Frank and Jeannie Robbins, who I credit as, my mentors at the Actors Studio, in addition to Lee, obviously. And then for those showcases, we would have to go to a rehearsal space, like a dance studio to rehearsal space. And ironically, it was the Coronet Theater on La Cienega Boulevard, which is near the Beverly Center. And the dance studio is above the theater, the Coronet Theater, Charles Busch, hi, where I saw Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, hello, every performance. And in that studio that we would have to go rehearse in, we would have to wait because on the same schedule, Jim Neighbors would be shuffle ball changing in the dance studio for some variety show that he was, or he either was on a variety show or had a variety show or had a seasonal variety show, or since I don't know. Sometimes they just gave people a variety show just willy nilly. So I'll never forget him I totally forgot this, with his damp rag across his neck, doing into the mirror and smiling and shuffling, and with the other two dancers, female dancers. Anyway, whatever. So that was interesting. So I left the Actors Studio, as we talked about last night, to go to La Mama, to be part of the La Mama theater group. And that was from when I left Actors Studio up through 1978. And then that was that, really. I mean, my major junkets, as it were, with regard training, were the Actors Studio and La Mama Theater Group, Playhouse, whatever you want to call it. So I wouldn't have traded any of this for the world, even with all the shit that hit the fan every day for me. Wandering the second floor of that Actors Studio, knowing the history of it, and I would get lost. It was so dark and musty and dusty and leftover props from God knows what, and a makeshift, what may have been a stage converted into a dressing room, converted into an acting space. It was just bizarre. It went way back because it's deep, like the wax museum would be. So I have those memories. Really cool. And I hope, again, I stayed true to form. I hope it didn't keep you too long. But that's the Actor Studio for me. And maybe a little bit tomorrow about my directing theater. And then let's jump into something left field after that, okay? Over the next few days. Okay, again, you know how much I adore you guys for putting up with me and making my day every day. And here we are again, another day made, and I'll see you tomorrow. Looking forward to another day made by you. Okay, maybe I helped a little. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.